Okay, big show today. There was a report yesterday on Belichick being done since the Germany loss to the Colts. But what about Mike Tomlin? The NFL owners were meeting, and they're going heavy internationally. Is that a risk that the NFL should be taking? We'll also dive a little bit around the league on some injury stuff, how it impacts front offices, and a couple teams I think are in must-win mode this weekend. But before we dive in, 3-and-Out Podcast, I'm John Middlekauff. Make sure you subscribe wherever you listen. Like I said earlier, subscribe to the YouTube page. And we got merch, thevolume.com. Thevolume.com. I'm rocking a hat right now. Hopefully everyone's having a good day. And we're going to talk some football. But first, I'm actually going to a concert tomorrow in Vegas to see Toby Keith, who's been sick for a while. My girlfriend's a huge fan. And I looked at the schedule and I saw it was the Raiders' backup quarterback. And then Herbert went out. I said, yeah, nothing for Thursday night football. We're going to go enjoy ourselves. You should too. It's the holiday season. You want to do something for someone, grab your smartphone, download the Gametime app, the official ticketing app of this podcast, concerts, comedy shows, games. Use the promo code John. Promo code John, get $20 off. Can't beat it. During these inflationary times, saving a little money, download the Gametime app, promo code John. Do it right now. I've been to concerts. I've been to baseball games, hockey games, football games, all because of my friends at Gametime. Okay, yesterday, well, if you're watching this, depending on the day, I think on Tuesday of this week, Tom Kern, who has covered the Patriots forever, reported that Belichick is going to be out at the end of the season. And really, it was decided when they lost to Shane Steichen and Gardner Minshew in Germany. And listen, whether that's true or not, Bill Belichick, if he was in control for 25 years, would 100% fire him himself, right? I mean, that's the way he would have worked. Like, this thing's been over for a while. You could argue it was really kind of over last year when he made some of his coaching hires, and this year's an all-time embarrassment. And listen, I'm a big believer. I've been fired a couple times. I've made career changes. I've started over. And every single time, it was the healthiest thing that ever happened to me. The one guy I worked for in the NFL, who's now considered, I don't know, the best coach in the league, was fired. And I think it's fair to say Andy Reid going from Philadelphia to Kansas City is the best thing that's ever happened to him. Look around the league right now. Sean Payton wasn't fired. He took a step back, reset, went to Denver, kind of got a fresh start. Now his team, I would say precipice of making the playoffs this year. Mike McCarthy ran out of town in Green Bay, leaves, takes a deep breath, goes to the Cowboys. This is going to be their third straight year in the playoffs, and I think they got a chance, if things go right, to make some serious noise. I think we'd all agree on that. Pete Carroll fired multiple times. Being fired is not that crazy. Bill Belichick has been fired before, and I think ultimately this will lead him to another place. He can reunite with Josh McDaniels, and everything is happy. I think it is 100% the right decision for the Crafts. It's over. Like, some things in life never end. Like, your parents are your parents. If you have kids, your kids are your kids. You can't just get rid of them. I mean, they're kind of with you, right? Even as they age, you just got to deal with them. Even if you don't, wish they were a little nicer, a little more successful or whatever, it is what it is, right? But professionally, sometimes you got to break up, and a lot of times there's a reason for it. And a lot of times, if you're a successful, high-achieving, ambitious person, like all these people in the NFL are, it's a very, very positive outcome for everyone involved, right? There's a reason that we're even talking about this. But what I don't understand, and someone hit me in the DMs a while back, was like, we talk so much about Bill Belichick. The guy's won 6 rings. He's been to 3 other Super Bowls with the Patriots. He's 10-3 against Mike Tomlin. He's kicked the livid shit out of him. And when you look at Tomlin's stretch of the last 2 games, losing to Arizona in that game with torrential downpour, crazy weather, and then the Patriots, I don't even think it's close what the worst loss is. Because ultimately, if you're playing Kyler Murray and there are multiple delays in the game, things can get weird. That is understandable to lose a game, even if it is a quote-unquote awful loss. To lose to the Patriots and Bailey Zappi when they're the first team since like 1938 to lose 3 games with holding the opponent to 10 points or under and losing all those games because they can't score. And then you look up, and I was at a bar last Thursday, and it's like 21-3 before you even blink. I mean, what are we doing? And listen, I think Mike Tomlin's good. I've defended him over the years as a lot of people on the forefront of this argument that he's overrated or the hype's too strong. But I went and just wrote down his record since 2018. He went 9-6. Then he went 8-8. Then in the Rona year, he went 12-4 and got his ass kicked. The score ended up coming back a little late, but let's face it, it wasn't that close to the Baker Mayfield Cleveland Browns. Last 3 years, 9-7, 9-8, and he's currently 7-6. This thing is going nowhere. Now, he's not going to bottom out like Belichick is doing this year or like Andy Reid did his last year in Philadelphia. That's clearly not going to happen. Because even if they were to lose out, they would still be 7-10. And more than likely, he's going to be 8-9 or 9-8. History would say he's going to be 9-8. But where are we going? What is the future? And if you're Mike Tomlin, and I understand the power of the brand, the Pittsburgh Steelers are easily one of the bigger brands in all of American sport. Their fan base is fucking enormous. Their organization is first class. They're obviously very loyal. But part of being a coach is you want to be with the best. And right now, and listen, people have argued, and I don't know whether Tomlin, his impact in the draft, how much of a hand he has, how strong he was behind Kenny Pickett. He definitely wasn't anti-Kenny Pickett. It's just not working out. And I think he would benefit, just like obviously Bill Belichick would benefit, just like Andy and Mike McCarthy benefited from starting over. It is very healthy. Like, this is not going anywhere. There's not just in 2 years, all of a sudden we're going to look up and they're just rattling off 12-win seasons. The other thing is, as a coach, when you start losing your fastball, what usually happens? You make very, very poor coordinator decisions. I saw it with Andy Reid in Philadelphia. He hired Juan Castillo because he didn't want to lose him to another team. Made him his defensive coordinator. It obviously completely unraveled, right? You saw it with Mike McCarthy's inability to hire a defensive coordinator and get it right when he was in Green Bay, right? And now I think you're seeing it with Mike Tomlin. You saw it last year with Belichick when he hired all his cronies that didn't even coach those positions to be his offensive coordinator and his quarterback coach. Like, what are we doing? And you saw it this year with Mike Tomlin on the offensive side of the ball. And I think sometimes you can lose your confidence when you're not winning like you're used to. And for a long period, for a decade straight, the guy was used to winning at a really, really high level. And now you look, he's just kind of an 8-8, 9-8, 9-6, 7-6. Like, that's just kind of his vibe. That's just kind of who he is right now. And I think no coach, if he hit the open market, people would be lined up to hire him. I actually think he makes a ton of sense. I said this yesterday. The Chargers, to me, cannot afford to hire an unknown. They cannot go the coordinator route. And for every good coordinator that's hired and becomes a stud head coach, a lot of them miss. A lot of people, and you guys have been sliding in my DMs at John Middlekauff on Instagram, asking about Dan Quinn, because everyone's like, this guy's locked to get a job. It's like, guys, did we see him in Atlanta? Like, yeah, when he had Kyle Shanahan, one of the great offensive coordinators of his era, he was good. Other than that, it wasn't so pretty. Like, this notion that Dan Quinn, you're just going to hire him. Yeah, he's a high-level guy. He's really good. What if he's just a really good coordinator? So you hire a guy like Mike Tomlin. Here's what I know. One, he's going to be pissed off because anytime, if you got any, stuff inside, when you're told you're not good enough, even if it's kind of obvious at the time, it pisses you off. Happens to me. I'm sure many people, it's happened to you, right? You get a little pep in your step when you get dumped or you get fired or you get, broken up with in terms of professionally in a business partnership. It's the way it works. And I think the Chargers, he would make a ton of sense. Gives him a little pizzazz in LA. He's a bright lights guy, big personality, but he's a real football coach. And to me, now, he wouldn't be cheap. This is not some $7 million lowest end of the ring when hiring a head coach level guy. You have to pay him 15 plus million because there would be countless teams very interested in this guy. I'd imagine Washington, in an area where he played college football, would be another team that would be very interested, right? All the teams that are interested in Belichick should be interested in Tomlin. And both guys are very dependent on their coordinators. Obviously, Belichick is going to have one in his back pocket, assuming that Josh comes with him. But to me, this notion that, like, Mike, they're never going to fire him. Why not? What are we doing? If I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, It's time. And sometimes it's hard. Like some divorces are easy. I hate her, she hates me. Let's go our separate ways. We haven't slept in the same room in a decade. We can't even fake it in front of our kids. This is pointless. Let's go. And then everyone's happy. And some are difficult. Like this is not an easy breakup. I even think the Belichick breakup's pretty easy. It's clear, Bill, this shit ain't working. We fucking appreciate everything you'll ever do or everything you've ever done for this organization. Now, we've paid you for it. We've paid you a premium, and you widely have benefited by being talked about as the greatest coach of all time. But this thing's over. The Tomlin thing, you can justify. Well, it doesn't suck. It's like, well, come on, guys. Sometimes you just got to press the eject button and blow the thing up. You don't even need to do that. You still got a lot of good players. You got to figure out the quarterback position. But it's just time for a change. And to me, that's with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And when if he becomes available, to me, the Chargers should be all over him. I mean, he would have to be their number one choice. And then it would come down to, and we've been talking about this, what happens with the Chargers general manager. And again, I wouldn't bet $10,000 that if Tomlin was available, that the Chargers would land him, because I would not shock me at all if they went cheap. That is historically their MO. But if they didn't, I think it would be a sad day for football, because I think him going there would immediately make them infinitely more relevant and impactful at a high level in the National Football League because of their quarterback. So I think it's over for Tomlin. However this season, plays out, whether they make the playoffs or not. I mean, they're a one and done team. You're not winning a game with Kenny Pickett, and definitely not with Mitch Trubisky. And listen, they keep re-signing Mitch Trubisky to these backup options. It's hard for me to have sympathy when that's the guy they believe in. Just look at the Cincinnati Bengals. Like, look who they made their backup quarterback, Jake Browning, who is clearly in a different fucking universe than Trubisky as a player. Like, you put yourself in a position, you have to value the backup quarterback in 2023. Because as we see, it's never been easier to play the position, just to function. I'm not saying to be Mahomes or to be Allen or be Lamar Jackson, but it is easy to find a guy who can function. Joe Flacco just showed up off the couch and is helping them win games. But you can find these younger guys who are improving, who can function in your offense. And they chose Mitch Trubisky. And that, I'm sorry, is a reflection on Mike Tomlin. Because that should be a guy that you throw your body in front of and say, under my dead body, is this guy going to stay on the team? Because we are one broken ankle. We are one, broken hand. We are one whatever injury away from this guy starting games for us. And if he starts games for us, unless TJ Watt, Highsmith have 17 sacks apiece in those games and Minka has 4 interceptions, we're going to lose. And that's what's happened. Can you believe we're this deep into the NFL season? We got to make every second count. With DraftKings Sportsbook, you can make the most out of every game. Bet on your favorite teams for a shot at winning big bucks. New customers can score $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting $5 on any matchup. So right now, get in on the action with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Download the app now and use the code JOHN. New customers can score $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on the NFL. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code JOHN. The crown is yours. I saw some NFL news today that the NFL, who clearly enjoys going international, right? This year they went to Germany. They've been going to London and over in the UK forever, which I totally understand. You're either growing or you're dying. You can never be afraid to try uncomfortable things in business. The NFL has gone international for a long, long time, especially adding this 17th game. It's not really taking away anything from the fans. But today they voted, one, they're going to go to Brazil next year, which I'd say is a pretty bold move. And two, that they are going to, in perpetuity, basically have 8+ international games moving forward. And I think you can see this coming from a mile away. 8's going to turn into 16. Like they're just going to have a full slate of games internationally. And I think the NFL has to be very careful because one issue, and listen, Adam Silver's never listened to me. Most people probably think I'm an NBA hater. I should be their most valued customer. I was born in the MJ era. I had a pair of shorts for like 10 NBA teams throughout junior high and high school. I have watched so many NBA games up until the last 5 or 6 years when they've lost me. They've lost me as a consumer. And the reason is because when I show up to give them their time, half the time when I turn on the TV, the best players are not playing. They are basically putting middle fingers up and saying F you to me. Last night in Chicago, the multiple-time MVP and best player in the NBA and current NBA champion, Nikola Jokic, was tossed out of a game for calling the referee a motherfucker after a blown call. This is not high school. Chicago, I guess I read on social media, has the highest percentage of Serbians in America. And obviously he's from Serbia. Pretty big deal. Like, it's a pretty big deal for those individuals to make an effort. I don't know if you've ever Googled NBA tickets, because I would imagine many people listening might not have been to an NBA game recently. They are outrageously expensive. And the way they treat the consumer, like Amazon's the best, right? No company in America right now treats the consumer better. You press a button, it's there within 24 hours. You don't like it, you got 30, 45 days to send it back free of charge. Like, they are the most consumer-friendly business in America. What's Amazon doing? Kicking fucking ass, taking names. What's the NBA doing? Anti-consumer, bleeding on a daily basis. And the NFL, the reason they have lapped everyone else, it's extremely consumer-friendly. When you show up on your couch, which is actually more valuable than going to a game, you know for a fact, if it's Bills Chiefs, that unless they have major injuries, every good player on both teams is not only going to play, they're going to give you everything they have. And America has embraced the sport like never before, and it's huge. But the NFL makes their money with people in America, right? And you can, and listen, this is 9 games, whatever, but part of business is you're always thinking bigger, 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 bigger. Expand, 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 expand. Money's all relative. 100 grand to me might not be much. 100 grand to you might be everything. $1 million to me might be a lot. $1 million to you might mean nothing. I mean, every single person values money differently, no different than business. At one point in time, $1 billion to the NFL was a big deal. Now you sell franchises for $6-7 billion. Now the league is signing $100 billion television deals. But you never want to go backwards. You always want to go forwards. The NBA had this happen with Adam Silver. He became huge on going international. And it felt like he forgot about us. And right now they are not reaping the benefits of that. It's cost their league a lot of money potentially here in this next, 12, 24 months when they negotiate these new television deals, which could be an utter and epic disaster. I mean, I expect it to be at the pace in which we're going. The NFL has not had that problem. And because, like I said, they are very, very consumer friendly. But I think you got to be very, very careful and never forget. And I think about this a lot too. Like, I had a lady slide into my DMs the other day. I think I made a comment about, I was using an analogy about a girl getting big, and I don't know. She's like, that offended me. And listen, I don't mean to offend anybody, but I can't worry about offending everybody. I speak to my base. I mean, this is kind of the way the world works. Right. And I talk like I talk. So I'm not going to make everybody happy on a daily basis. And that's not really my role to. I try to play to the greatest percentage of people that I think I can relate to pretty well. And I know the way we talk, and I know the way we think, because I'm just one of you guys. And I think the NFL has really, really resonated with people in this country. And it's never been bigger. And I understand I think sometimes we throw around the word greed instead of just like business. It's business. You always, like, Jeff Bezos didn't stop when they really started making money. He kept the pedal to the metal. Neither did Steve Jobs. Neither do any of these people. And I understand why the NFL is thinking like this, and especially the league office. But you ask all these owners, the reason why their teams are worth so much, the reason why they're buying yachts and homes in Italy or Brazil or wherever the fuck their 7th home is, and unlimited cars and private jets, and the life of the elites of the elites, is because of us and because of the fans, in this country and in the cities and the greater areas around those cities that have NFL teams. And it's just something to be cognizant of as this league continues to get bigger, because these games are going to be successful, right? They'll sell out in Brazil. They're going to continue to sell out in Europe. They could, they went to Germany. Why wouldn't they go to Spain or Italy? I mean, they'll go to other countries, and they'll go to Japan. I mean, they used to when I was a kid. I'm sure they'll do that again. And it's going to work. And when something works, what do you usually do? You want more of it. And I just think you got to be very, and I'm not some alarmist. I've just seen in other sports, you go more international. Soccer could go international. It doesn't matter. It's the biggest sport in the world, and it always will be, just based on the quantity. The NFL is very dependent on the domestic consumer. Like, I mean, paying the bills for literally everything, especially their television deals, which, let's face it, pay the bills. So it's just something to watch. And another thing that came out of the owners' meeting was the hip drop tackle. And I personally think it's kind of stupid that you try to over legislate. You could find anything in slow motion that looks really bad, right? And some things like the NFL I grew up on in the early mid 90s was a very, very violent sport, right? It was some of the best players were the most violent guys, and the most violent guys were truly celebrated when you lighten guys up, whether you were Steve Atwater, John Lynch. I mean, everyone knew the big hitters, and you would get absolutely destroyed if you went over. Those days are done. And I think the violence, and I've been saying this forever, it always bothers me in college football when someone gets kicked out of the game because we only play so many games in football. This is not baseball where there's 162. Like, if you get run in a baseball game and you're an everyday player, like, whatever, it's a sixth inning. You only had a couple more innings anyway. You're going to play 150 games. In football, you don't get that many spots. And when you eject a guy, it's why my issue with Big Dom and Dre Greenlaw, like, no one needed to be thrown out of that game. This is not Pee Wee football here. Just separate them and let's move the you know what on. And I think the hip drop tackle is one of those things that's getting over legislated. No one's trying to hurt anybody, but I can't tackle you high because I will get a flag and I will get in trouble. And I don't want to tackle you too low because players openly talk. I don't want to get too low. My ankles, my feet, and my knees are my moneymaker, right? If I'm an offensive skill guy, and those are the guys that are tackled: running backs, tight ends, wide receivers, quarterbacks. Tackle me in the midsection. Well, if I tackle you in the midsection, and one of the tackles in most recent memory that became a point of a topic was the Mark Andrews injury. Mark Andrews is not 5'10", a buck 70. It is hard to tackle guys the size of George Kittle and Rob Gronkowski and Mike Evans. How am I supposed to get this guy to the ground? Especially if I'm not Ray Lewis. What if I'm just a DB or a safety or just a smaller linebacker? Like, yeah, Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw don't typically need to, quote unquote, hip drop tackles. They can just tackle through you, right? Luke Kuechly. Most guys are not that. Most guys need to do everything humanly possible to get you to the ground. But no one's trying to injure anybody. So you can throw a flag on that play. What's it going to do? Like, what am I supposed to do? Do you want me to hit guys on the knee? Do you want more knee and ankle injuries? Because I think this is always gets back to why Belichick and Sean Payton, they despise, all caps, despise the league office. It's a bunch of guys that have never been involved with teams. Listen, Rodgers very, very successful. Him and David Stern are easily the most successful commissioners of my lifetime. They are guys you want leading your organization toward financial prosperity. But one thing I think David was probably better about is being in the trenches with the guys. Not that he was just a lawyer, but I think the disconnect sometimes between the coaches, the players, and Raj and some of his cronies is wide. Now, you can say Troy Vincent played in the NFL. I think Troy is kind of morphed into a Roger 2.0 type. And I think there's a lack of, there's a disconnect. And to not have coaches and GMs, it's why, like, people in the media, if you don't talk to coaches and the GMs, I don't take your opinion if you're a quote unquote reporter that seriously. If you only talk to agents, like, you're very, very biased. Who are the people making the decisions? What do they tell you in business? You want to be a sales guy? Get to the decision maker, right? Whether that's the secretary or whether that's, the guy pulling the trigger. But unless you can get to the decision maker, you're wasting breath. Like, you're just wasting your time. And ultimately, the people that coach this up and sign and cut and get rid of and add these players are the people in the front office. And none of those guys are involved in the league. So the hip drop tackle to me just feels very stupid. It really does. Because I don't think it's malicious. Even the thing that happened to Mark Andrews, That wasn't malicious at all. He was just, I don't know, trying to tackle the guy. Now, I totally understand if you're like doing a 360 barrel roll like you're an alligator or a crocodile once you're connected. Yeah, that's a little shady. It's no different than like when the guy's on the ground and you twist their foot. I don't really see that happening. But clearly, this is going to be a point of emphasis, and they're going to go at it in the very, very near future, which I just think is a mistake. A couple NFL newsy things. You just go to Roto World, which is where I just kind of go through to see injuries. It is crazy how many guys on good teams are hurt. And just listen, it's the NFL. It's the middle of December. Every team is injured. Even if your guys are playing, they are banged up. But you get countless guys that can't practice, that are game time decisions. This is really a time of year when your GM and your front office need to thrive, because the practice squad, my guy Steven Spock, who played at Fresno State and played in the league for a while, I played golf with him a couple weeks ago. He's a listener of the podcast, and he was telling me his first year, he made the team with the Philadelphia Eagles. Terrell Owens last year when he went to the the driveway with Drew Rosenhaus. But back when even 10 years ago in the NFL, it's less than that. Practice squad, the moment you made a team and started playing in real games, whether you were on a shitty team, whether you were just an undrafted free agent and made a team, your practice squad eligibility was over. So like when you see Jason Peters at 40 plus years old on a practice squad, that was not possible up until a couple years ago. Like Josh Rosen, once he played as a rookie and was terrible, historically the rules, he would have been done. You either have to put him on your active roster or he can't be on the practice squad. He has no role. He either makes a 53 or he's done. Well, they've expanded the practice squads. They've thrown out the practice squad rules, and anyone can be available, right? Which is pretty cool. So you can find I can just sign Larry Fitzgerald tomorrow and put him on my practice squad if I wanted to. Terrell Owens, or just any player that's like JJ Watt, whoever, guys in the league, right, that get cut. I can put them on my practice squad, regardless of their tenure in the league. And to me, the pressure right now on having a practice squad of not only guys with a future, but then assistant coaches. I say it all the time once the season starts, that your coordinators are just so focused on the game plan, and rightfully so. It's every day of every week, throughout the week, Monday through Saturday, about building a game plan against my opponent. The assistant coaches are much more involved, like the position coach. I'm a quarterback coach, D-line coach, whoever. I play a role in the game plan, but I also play a big role at practice and working with young guys to improve them. If I'm the play caller, my role as a developmental guy is pretty slim to none. My head coach, and a lot of head coaches now call plays, same thing. There is a ton of emphasis on the lower end guys on your staff to work with these guys and have them ready, because on any given game, a corner and a guard can shatter a leg. And all of a sudden, your corner and your guard on your practice squad, they know your plays. Are they ready to go? Because if they don't need to be as good as your starters, or even if it's a backup, but they do need to be functional, and can they get you through a game? And if you're a playoff team, can you win games with them? And I think the emphasis right now around the league on all these guys that are banged up, how good's your practice squad? How good's your coaching staff at developing these guys? How good was your scouting staff at identifying these guys with an upside? Because that's what it comes down to. Obviously, the high-end guys, right, whether it's whoever, from A.J. Brown to Travis Kelce to Justin Jefferson to Deebo Samuel, those guys get injured. There's an enormous Trent Williams, you name it, any sweet player in the league. There is a gap the mile wide. But most players are just considered average starters, right? The majority of players in the NFL are not CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons. They're just like the rotating defensive tackle on the Cowboys. Well, what if that guy breaks his leg this week? Who's the guy you have on your practice squad to take his spot? Is he good enough? Is he good enough to give you 88, 92% of what that backup was giving you? Because if he is, you're fine. If there is a dramatic drop-off, then there's a ripple effect. And there's a domino effect that can lead to a problem. Because then you got to play your starters more. They're already worn down. That could lead to injury to that guy. That could lead to him not being as effective. It's just something to keep an eye on. And to me, the teams, we talk about depth a lot. And for most, like, well, who's your backup? It's actually like, what's your 3 or 4 deep? And most of us, myself included, don't who cares about the practice squad until you have to care? Until 3 practice squad guys get brought up over a 2-week span and they're starting and they're playing roles like a right guard, a nickel corner, and like your punter broke his leg. You got to get this punter off the street. And it's like, okay, this kind of matters now. And it's just something to keep an eye on. Listen, getting in an accident is hard. Hiring Morgan & Morgan is easy. 35% of all fatal accidents occur between 6 o'clock and midnight. People aged 15 to 24 had the highest rate of emergency room visits due to car accidents of all age groups. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury firm with over 100 offices nationwide and 900 lawyers. Morgan & Morgan has been fighting for the people for over 35 years. Listen, we've all known people who have gotten accidents, and having good representation is key. Having someone that you can believe in and submitting an injury claim with Morgan & Morgan is so easy. If you're ever injured, you can check out Morgan & Morgan. Their fee is free unless they win. For more information, go to forthepeople.com/John or pound law, pound 529 from your cell phone. That's forthepeople.com/John or pound law, pound 529 from your cell. This is a paid advertisement. Before we get into the bold take of the week, I think 2 teams this week have a lot of pressure on them. I saw today that Dan Campbell is still the betting favorite for Coach of the Year, which I understand because if they get to 12, even 13 wins, it's the Detroit Lions. That's how many 12-plus win seasons do they have in 3+ decades? Not many. So I get it. But let's face it, they have not been good as of late. They got their ass kicked on Thanksgiving. They got worked last week. These are 2 divisional games. Like, part of why I love the Lions it's one thing if they play like the Cowboys or the Ravens or whoever, like a good team, and lose. Like, yeah, I totally get it. It's another thing when you play teams in your division, whether it's at home, like the Green Bay game, or whether it be the Chicago game on the road, and get worked. Because Thanksgiving, they got worked. Last weekend, they got worked. That's a problem. And now they're hosting Denver, which is an uncommon opponent for them, at home. Like, you should beat this team by 10+ points. Like, this is a game where if I'm going to take you seriously and pick you to win a playoff game, especially hosting a playoff game, because when you lose as a team hosting a playoff game, Minnesota last year, that sucks. That is not ideal. It's time to get it together. Let's see a game where, you win by double digits, you're in complete control, you're scoring at will. Denver obviously has some momentum. They've been playing much better over the last couple months, but I'm very interested in Detroit this weekend. That's Saturday night game. The other game that I was telling Stuckey today, my gambling guy, who Action Network, you see it's on the podcast, obviously coming up. And if you're watching this on YouTube, we had another video. You go watch it. Incredible gambling picker. That Miami's loss against Tennessee, to me, is still the second worst loss of the year. Now, I know statistically it's the worst loss because no team, 3 minutes to go, up 15 points. But to me, Dallas losing at Arizona is just pretty bad. Now, the thing with Miami is I think a lot of us never really bought in. It's like, I've seen them play good teams, doesn't really work out. They beat the shit out of bad teams. Tua's good, but his ceiling can't really move. The moment Tyreek gets hurt, as of recording this Wednesday, didn't practice. I expect him to play, but they have a million other injuries. I don't feel that good. Now, I'm not acting like the Jets, all of a sudden what we witnessed last week is going to be the norm. I think there's a lot of pressure on Miami because they lose this week. I'm sorry, I'm out on them, like completely out. Like, you could tell me that if the Bills win that they lose the division, but this is must win, especially when you look at their schedule. It's like the Cowboys, the Ravens, the Bills. You can't beat the Jets. I'm sorry. All of a sudden, the season went from what an incredible year for the Miami Dolphins to disaster potential. So I'm fascinated by this game. And I think that's why I'm going to make it my bold take of the week. Last week, I said that the Jets not only would beat the Texans in the trap spot, but Zach Wilson would play well. And I do think whenever, and listen, this has happened to me. I'm sure many people listening, it's happened to them. Sometimes we can overthink stuff and put too much pressure on ourselves. and it limits our ability and our capabilities at whatever we're attempting to do. It almost slows you down. It's why coaches say with football players, like, you got to take the knowledge and learn it so well that you can just play free. You're not even thinking. You know what's going on because you've studied and you've practiced hard. But when you're playing, you're just playing. It's very free. Like anyone that plays golf knows if you're thinking about 7 different swing thoughts, inside of my backswing, get to the top, be slow, come inside, keep my left foot, you have no shot. You just got to swing. You just got to play golf. And that's your best chance at shooting a low score. I do think there's a little looseness with the Jets. What do we got to lose? The other thing is, like, they got good players, and they have a really, really good front. Their defensive line can really get after you. And the Miami Dolphins offensive line is not only atrocious when healthy, I think it's pretty average at best. They have a million injuries. Tua can't move. He's not really good against pressure. I think the Jets win this week. And I think all of a sudden it is a 5 alarm fire with the Miami Dolphins. So my bold take of the week, I'm not putting predictions on Zach, but it might be a weather game. But I think the Jets, back-to-back weeks, take out playoff teams. And all of a sudden we're talking, what the hell is going on with the Miami Dolphins? This is the bold take of the week brought to you by Guinness. Gather your friends, raise your glasses, and toast to a win. Guinness Draft Stout, imported by Diageo Beer Company, USA, New York, New York. Please drink responsibly.